Hello and welcome to the Very Wool podcast. My name is Diana Hawthorne and you can find me online as Delaware Spinster. I'm going to talk to you today about what I'm wearing, then talk about a finished object and try it on for you, and then we're going to talk a lot about whips and what I'm planning coming up soon. So just a disclaimer, because I'm going to show you this shawl and wrap it around myself, I did not yet turn on my microphone. I'm going to test, hopefully the volume is okay for you, and then I will turn that on after I show you this finished object. So firstly, what am I wearing? Well, this is actually a hand-sewn shirt that I have. It's nothing all that special, but because I do like to wear things that I've sewn if I'm not wearing something that I've knit, I did want to share it anyway. So it's just a simple drapey kind of a jersey top with some sort of lace flutter sleeves. It is Simplicity 1107 if you're somebody who sews. And this is sort of my system for how I keep track of patterns that I've already done. But I enjoyed this pattern. I will use it again because I really love a V-neck and I really love an open neckline, and this has both. And it was just fabric that I had lying around, but it is somewhat special fabric in that the jersey that I used was left over from something that I made for my sister. I had made her a bunch of nursing covers when her first baby was born, and this was leftover fabric from that. And then the flutter sleeves and sort of back lace there is left over from my wedding dress that I sewed for myself. So, so again, scrap fabric, but sort of nostalgic scrap fabric, and I wear this all the time, especially now that it's gotten so warm that I'm not wearing a lot of my hand knits. I am going to talk about that a little bit with project planning as well, though, because I'm working on a solution to that. So, the most exciting thing, I finally have a finished object. If you've been watching, you know I have been working on the Nightshift by Andrea Mowry or DreaReneeKnits, and I've enjoyed the entire process, but it has been a long time coming. It's been a couple months for me, which when I first started it, I thought it would go quicker, but it's one of those things where you start small and then you get to the point where it's just like unwieldy. So here is my humongous Nightshift. So when I first started and I had just this tiny bit, it got to the point I was going pretty fast. And I was like, oh, I think I'm going to finish this soon. And then I got to the point where these rows, I wanted it to be really big, and they are so, I can't even fit them in the frame here. They are so long. The last time I tried it on, it was like right here, and I wasn't sure if I was going to stop here or do a whole nother section. And I was like, you know what? I need about 8 more inches in order to make it long enough or wide enough for me. And oh my goodness, it just took, it felt like forever. It was really only a week or two, but it felt very long. So how am I going to wear this humongous thing, which, by the way, even look, the backside looks beautiful. I sometimes will wear it like this. Honestly, when I'm at home, this is what I do. So, so this is what a lot of people will see. But I also am a big fan of doing this sort of wrap over way. And generally I will use a little shawl pin right here. That's often what I do. I just love the way this looks. Yay, finished object. Okay, awesome. So anyway, I'm really happy with this. This is largely handspun yarn. All of this is handspun. All of this is handspun. In here, this is Noro curate that I had in my stash. But all of this is handspun. It really is largely handspun. Again, a little bit of hand dyed and a little bit of that Noro again. But it's a slip stitch or a mosaic knitting pattern, if I haven't said that already. And I really enjoy that kind of process. I think it's fun to make. I love the way it came out, even though I had started it with like a whole pile of stash that it wasn't working for anything else. And largely I made this a little bit of a bigger gauge than she uses, which doesn't matter to me for shawls. So it's really, really thick because everything is basically marled unless it was already a thicker hand spun like some of these were at the end. Most of it I held 2 yarns or 3 yarns together to marl it the whole way so that I got more colors, all the colors. I just kind of went nuts with using scraps. So it was great for scrap busting. And it will be great for some cold weather. It is not so great for mid-May when it's pretty warm here. So I'm not gonna wear it for the rest of the episode. But yeah, I'm really happy with it. I love it. I think it's beautiful. I have to go block it because I had just finished this huge I-cord bind off late last night and made sure the last of my ends were woven in. You can see my process is I weave in the ends before I block, and then I wet block it, and then I trim them. So I leave them about 1 inch or 2 before I block it so that if they need to move at all, they can move, and then I trim them. Or I don't sometimes, if I'm being honest. So I definitely weave them in and I definitely block, and then whether I trim them is depending on the mood and whatever. I can always do that later. So I'm really happy with this. It's really squishy. It's beautiful. I knew that if I used all the colors and a whole bunch of yarns that I did not want to use for a sweater, it still could really work well and end up beautiful. And it did, and I'm very happy with it. So now a little bit of a transition. I'm going to go ahead and turn on my microphone. So this is sort of an experiment for me to see whether it was okay without the microphone or not. And I will get your opinion on that as well if you want to share with me in the comments. Okay. So now I've got my microphone on. I'm going to try and not mess with that. I know it would have been really difficult with the shawl, but at any rate, thank you for sticking with me and waiting. I'm glad I finally had a finished object to share because sometimes it feels like I go quite a few episodes without one. And the truth is, I think that should be normal in terms of knitting. If knitting is not your full-time job, and wish that I could, but it's not for me at this point in my life. I don't think that we have to have finished objects all the time, but I definitely know people online like to, in social media, like to share all of the finished objects, all the beautiful things. I really need to do better at sharing my works in progress because I think people still like to see those things evolved, or at least I do. When I'm looking at somebody else's Instagram feed, I like seeing a series of working on a project, and I tend to not do that enough, I think. So it's something I'm working on. I do want to talk to you about some whips and some project planning because at this point, I literally was finishing this late last night, and I'm trying to figure out what's going to be my next whip that I'm focusing on. I have 9 whips up in the corner of my room there that are sort of on the back burner. I even in my Ravelry page have them as hibernating, which I feel is, it's something that I waffle on a lot, honestly. I wish I could work on all the whips, but if I do work on everything, then I don't get anything finished. Sometimes I work on 10 things at once. Sometimes I get to the point, like with this night shift, at the end I was just working on one thing. So it does feel really good to finish something, even if it's not season appropriate and I don't get to wear it much. But it also feels, it got to a point where it was kind of a slog. Like the last few rows, I was using 2 40-inch needles because it was that long that it was really squishy and tight on one 40-inch needle, and I kept losing a couple stitches. So I ended up having it on 2 sequential long needles, and then, every row was a little bit more painful than the last. It just got to a point where it was physically challenging for my hands, like literally painful, not that I wasn't enjoying it in terms of how the colors were developing and the stitch pattern. It was just that it physically was hurting my hands. So, so I was really happy to finish that last night. And the I-cord bind off, again, a little bit painful for my hands after I'd been knitting for a few hours yesterday. So, so I'm excited to be done with that, and I'm glad I pressed through and got it done. But now it's kind of thinking, do I work on the next most finished object? Do I work on something that's completely different? Or do I give myself a break, which means do what I want? So some days work on a whip that's just started, some days work on something older. I was hoping I would be really motivated to work on that 2023 MCal, that Geo Gradient shawl that we talked about before. And I still, it's in my rotation, but it's so far from finished, and it's a big enough project that it's not something that I want to work on constantly right now. So, so basically I'm going to have that in rotation with a couple other things. So what might those things be? Well, first of all, I had shared my inclination shawl with you all at some point, maybe like the first episode of my podcast. It is no further along, basically. Okay, it's squishy, it's beautiful, I absolutely love it, and this is Handspun yarn, and I love this. It's going to be wonderful. I haven't been working on it because of the fact that it's similar enough to the Nightshift that I didn't want to work on both at the same time. So every time I picked this up, I thought, shouldn't I be working on that? So that was kind of, it was like a guilt thing that I decided not to work on this. So I am genuinely excited to work on this. This is going to go a little bit higher in the rotation, but this is still going to be a huge project. I expect it's going to be about as big as the Nightshift. It's the same kind of shape. And I have some that are a little bit smaller, but then again, I have a limited amount of yarn for this. So it's going to be as big as the yarn lets me make it, which should be about the size of the Nightshift if my calculations are correct. Who knows? Who really knows? I can always cut it off if it gets to the point that I want and I don't have and I have too much yarn basically, then I can always stop it and then use that yarn for something else. Obviously I like scrap busting kind of projects, but I also may get to a point where I just have to stop because I have no more yarn. So that'll be an adventure, and it's probably going to take me a number of months because I'm not committing to just working on that right now, but it is in the mix. So what else is in the mix? Well, I have a couple of sweaters that are newer in terms of like relatively recent cast-ons that I haven't talked to you about, that I'm still excited about because they're new enough cast-ons, right? So one of them is the Hinterland sweater by Jennifer Steingass. I'm just going to show you the sort of printed pattern picture. I'm not going to share any of the pattern, but because this is a paid for pattern, but you may recognize this. She's Jen Steingass is popular. Her handle is Knit Love Wool, so so you may know her. I really like her stuff, and I had never done a stranded colorwork yoke or a stranded colorwork sweater. So I decided it was time, and I had some hand-dyed yarn of mine and decided to make this plan. And you can see it's early days. You know, this is just the top of the yoke. This is the neckline here. But you can sort of see what's coming together here. So the yarns that I'm using, I have my own hand-dyed yarn here in this sort of variegated, I don't know, mahogany, some type of a nice brown shade to it. It's got a little bit of, had a little bit of lint on it, but it's got a little bit of black. It's got a little bit of red, a little bit of purple, but it's really brown. And then I am using a yarn that I was really excited about that's called Creepy Girl Tendencies. And it is from, it's going to come to me. I'm going to put it in the description because I can't believe I have lost the dyer's name in my mind. So anyway, I think they're going to go really well together. It's going to be a subtle kind of a, like some of the stitches in the color work you kind of lose a little bit because of the fact that both are variegated, and that is okay to me. So, so I wasn't going for optimal high contrast. I was going for more subtle because I think it'll suit this pattern really well. Dragon Horde yarn, I want to say. Again, I'll put it in the description box, but I know it was called Creepy Girl Tendencies, and I just absolutely loved it. I had my eye on it. I thought I was going to make a sock with it, which I might if I have some leftovers, but then I saw this, and you can see it maybe a little bit better on the back side. I just thought it looked awesome with my brown yarn that I had dyed. So anyway, so this I am still pretty... I guess about 12 rows into the color work chart, which I think is 32 rows. So it's early enough that that it's still manageable and I'm able to kind of take it with me places, but it's not something that I can do like during a meeting or, you know, in a movie theater or something like that. Not that I really go to that many movie theaters, but you know what I mean. I haven't really been working on it in the car. That's more realistic for me. It's a little too fussy for that with following the color work chart. I really kind of have trouble doing that if I'm on the go. So at any rate, so this is definitely one of the projects that I'm excited to work on as well. I have one other sweater that I cast on relatively recently that I have not been sharing about just because I've been kind of focused on one or two whips. So I kind of started and then put it down. So this, again, I like to print my patterns. Sorry, it's what works for me. So this is the Straya, I believe is how she says it, by DreaReneeKnits. Absolutely beautiful. Love this. I'm not doing it in her colors. Her original Straya was like an off-white and has really nice, like kind of retro primary colored stripes. So like 4 or 5 stripe colors. It looks like, yeah, 4 or 5 stripe colors. So at any rate, I really loved her original one, but I wanted to put my own spin on it and make something that is more wearable for me and fits better into my wardrobe right now, because I do have some off-white. I have an off-white cardigan that I love, and I just finished that in the fall. So I didn't really need another off-white cardigan yet. So, so anyway, so this is Straya. It is a top-down cardigan that is in the stitch pattern just like Inclination, so it's half fisherman's rib, which I love. I think I slightly enjoy brioche more, but don't tell half fisherman's rib because I love them both. So you can see this is sort of the collar part that's going to be... I mean, I've got like none of this sweater done, right? So just tiny little bit of the collar. It's squishy. I love it. This is a fingering weight yarn. And what I am using, I was very excited about. I was at a yarn shop and saw the fingering weight confetti tweed from Wonderland Yarns and Fraptious Fibers. And I love their fibers, and I just hadn't bought any of their yarns. And I loved what they had at the shop, but I know that Wonderland Yarns will dye any of their bases basically on any of their colorways, so you can have, you know, thousands of possible combinations. So I spent a very long time dreaming about what I wanted a sweater quantity of, and ultimately I got the confetti tweed, which has again like little neps. It's really hard to see here, but it's got those little rainbow neps, and then it also has sparkle to it, so it has like rainbow nylon within it, and it just, oh my gosh, I mean, it just looks gray on the screen, which is so unfortunate. It is vibrant and beautiful, but it is gray. So it's gray with spots with speckles as well, dyed speckles, as well as these neps, as well as the sparkle. So maybe you can kind of get an idea of it. And I'll put those details in the description box as well. It is so soft. It's superwash merino. And then, as I said, has those sort of added things to it. And the colorway that I got is called Cloak and Dagger, which is a really beautiful variegated gray that then has speckles of all kinds of different rainbow colors. So nope, you can't see it at all. But there are orange and pink and green and blue. It's just fantastic. So I'm very excited about this. And I actually got it for a totally different cardigan, swatched it and realized that I couldn't see the texture very well because of everything that's going on in this yarn. But with such a bold texture as the this like deep ribbing that you get with half fisherman's rib or brioche or anything like that, I just think you still get to see, you get to enjoy the gray, but you get to see the texture where when I was doing sort of a basket weave knit stitch, I was not seeing those little, the little like pearl bump texture. So it works for this, absolutely love it. And because it already has sort of rainbow speckles that are dyed in, and then the rainbow nylon that's twisted into the yarn, and then also has the rainbow tweedy neps, I decided to do a rainbow of yarn stripes. So the contrast color stripes, I'm using just the red from this Handspun. And then I'm using orange or yellow from some of my other variegated Handspuns. It's not going to be perfectly clean, always the same red, always the same orange. I don't care. I like to have fun. I'm using a blue that is actually just a neighborhood fiber company, one of their sort of one-off dye skeins that, unnamed skeins that came in a mystery bag. And then this is my own hand-dyed bear hair from Knit Picks. So it is going to have sort of a red, orangey, yellow, green, blue, purple, repeat. And I think it's going to be fantastic. I'm very excited about it. So it's going to be rainbow in so many ways, but also just a functional gray sweater. So it feels a little bit less loud than a lot of the variegated fade handspun rainbow sweaters that I already have made myself, because yes, I have multiple basically rainbow sweaters. I just have a lot of really colorful things in my wardrobe. So I love gray, and this way I get to do color in a really wearable gray way. I don't know, I think it's gonna be great. This, even Andrea Mowry, when she was talking about Straya the other day, was talking about how it's definitely a slow project. It's just one of those things that's going to take me a while. So that's totally fine. As you know, those aren't my only whips right now, and I definitely have a few things to focus on. So those are some of my sort of high priority things. But I also am planning for a couple of other things. So let me share with you. I was working on a swatch while I was traveling, and then I ended up, I don't even know where it is here. Where's my swatch? I was working on this swatch, and then I started to pull it out, and I thought I should share it first because, yeah, this is how much of a mess I am. Here we go. So I was starting to pull out the swatch, and then I realized that it was sort of a opportunity to talk about this project that I'm planning. So this is the same yarn that I had shared with you all from my Maryland Sheep and Wool acquisition section. So this is the Kim Dyes yarn, her smoothie fingering, which is linen and silk, and this is going to be, I think, the Wishes cardigan by Hoey Locatelli. and you can just see, I mean, it's like an open gauge. It's so drapey. It's so soft. It's just going to be really nice. So I think I'm going to make the Wishes cardigan with this. And as soon as I finished blocking this shawl, or blocking this swatch, which was bigger, I blocked it and I liked it. And then I felt like it was drapey enough. So, so I started to just pull it out because I'd already gotten the information that I wanted. And I don't like to waste the yarn by saving it in a swatch unless I have just a ton of the yarn. So, or, you know, if the swatch is some sort of a special stitch pattern, then I might, but just stockinette, I'm just going to pull it out. So you can see it's kind of looks sheer, except that if I'm actually wearing it, it really doesn't. It looks like it has pretty good coverage, and it's definitely variegated, but I think it's going to look nice. And I'm thinking about, it is something that's knitted flat, so I swatched it flat because it's a cardigan. I'm thinking about whether I'm going to need to do like a striping, 1x1 striping, because of the fact that it is variegated enough. I might get some pooling if I don't alternate skeins or do some type of, I don't know that you can really do helical when it's flat, but I think just by definition helical should be in the round. But this is definitely, you can see it, it's pretty variegated. So I don't know. I haven't resolved that issue in my head yet, but it is so soft, so drapey, so light. It's just going to be a really nice sort of summer cardigan. And as I sort of alluded to earlier, I really need more summery knits. So this is something that that I'm thinking about casting on. Now, the issue with casting this on right now, it's not going to be done this summer because look at how many other fingering weight, you know, items, sweaters I'm working on. I don't know that this would be done this summer anyway. So then is it worth casting it on right now? Well, why did I swatch it if I'm not going to cast it on right now? That's always, this is like a huge dilemma that I get into this situation where I'm like, I want to cast on something new, but we all know I'm working on so many different things. So why would I cast this on when I have other fingering made sweaters? I don't know, because it's so pretty. Look how nice that is. It's just beautiful. It's beautiful. It's soft. It's got a great sheen, which again, you just can't get from the video, but I think it's lovely, and it actually would go well with what I'm wearing today anyway. So I don't know. I'm thinking about it. Yeah, that's one of the two things that I'm sort of working on planning right now. And when I say two things, that's a complete lie. I have about 12 things that I'm thinking about. I constantly struggle with looking at my Ravelry queue, looking at the yarn in my stash, you know, dreaming about dyeing something, getting a special yarn or pulling a special yarn out of my stash that I have saved for something. So anyway, so that's one of the things that I'm really seriously thinking about and that I bothered to swatch for. I am also swatching for a Dune Drifter, which is a pattern by Wool and Pine, and it's a knit t-shirt, and it's just lovely. It's knit from one side to the other, and so it's a little bit unique. It's got a little bit of a lace trim at the base, but my swatch for that is still pretty small. I like to do a nice wide swatch, so then it takes me a lot longer to swatch it, and I have to use more yarn, which is again why I end up frogging my swatches right after I block and either meet gauge or, you know, re-swatch with a different needle size, etc. So I think that I think the Wishes cardigan I'm more likely to start sooner. I don't know. I'm sort of waffling. If you have thoughts or if you've made either the Wishes cardigan or a Dune Drifter, let me know, because I'm sort of torn. Which brings me to my last sort of planning section. I think I do so much dreaming about yarn and swatching and planning especially with all the hand spun and hand dyed that I use, that I feel like that should be its own section. So I think it's going to now, because otherwise I would be talking about the same whips all year and then having like 3 finished objects, and that's kind of boring. So let's talk about planning. This is some hand spun yarn that I have. I finished this, I don't know, a few months back. So I posted it when I finished it. I'm happy with this. It's a 3-ply fingering weight, but it's not done. I finished this much and thought, oh, I'm just going to use it as an accent for something. And then I realized, you know what, I really love this. And I think it's a nice, it's kind of neutral. Again, you know, my kind of thing. Like, it's a little bit neutral, but it's also got pops of color. And I had more of this fiber that I just combined a bunch of fibers, some of which were undyed, some of which were dyed by other people, some of which were dyed by me. All super soft, fine wools, and then some silk and a little bit of sparkle like Angelina and nylon. Yeah, that's it. It's mostly wool and some silk. So, so I'm really happy with these 4 skeins, and they go well together. I measured them, and I have somewhere around 700 yards. And I thought 700 yards, that's an awkward amount. I could do 2 different colorwork yokes with it. I could do a lot of smaller things, but I thought 700, why not double it? I only used about half of the fiber when I was doing this. And then I had set some aside for, oh, I'm going to blend it into other things, whatever. I was temporarily bored with it. I really like the fiber. I'm going to go back to spinning it. I already have started spinning some more singles. So because I had already pre-blended the fiber and set it aside, I do expect that I can still make it just like this. But then I'll also want to alternate skeins. Like, I won't want to do a sweater that I've done this and then I've done all the other later skeins. I do want to alternate them. Maybe not alternate rows like I was talking about with the hand dyed that I often do, but just literally alternating the skeins with the earlier versus the later, just in case. But I did take good notes on this, and I have it with me to look at while I'm spinning the other stuff. So this is a spin I'm working on, and I basically am hoping to have closer to, 1,200, 1,500 yards. And then that's going to be the background for a cardigan probably, or a pullover. So here's the dilemma. I had thought about using this all for a steeked, because it's not superwash. So as compared to hand dyed fingering that I may have that's superwash, or like indie dyed fingering, this would be good for steeking. I have not steeked yet, but you know, I'm confident that I will be able to. I have a couple of patterns that I'm thinking about. So one of them by Andrea Mowry, DreaReneeKnits. One of them is the Shiftigan. Although I've also thought about Shifty, which is the pullover version. Shifty was the original. It's mosaic knitting. It's related to that Nightshift shawl that I was talking about, but I really enjoyed that pattern. The Shiftigan, because it is steeked, is done, it looks like the same stitch pattern, but it's done in stranded colorwork knitting as opposed to mosaic knitting. I think she's explained this on her podcast before, that it just wasn't working out with trying to steek the mosaic knitting. So it's knit differently, looks similar. And then the other one that I was thinking about is the Stone Crop cardigan. Stone Crop also comes in a pullover, and they're all basically fingering or a light sport weight. So that's what I was thinking about for this. I feel like it would be really good for Stone Crop, but I had already kind of planned for it to be Shifty, or the Shiftigan. So now I'm really torn, because I've been spinning the other, I know I shared at some point my Inglenook fiber that I'm spinning on spindles that's going to be similar weight to this, so like a 3-ply fingering. And then it's not gonna all be Inglenook because who has enough of that? I mean, you can never get enough. I have a ton of it, but I don't have enough of all the same color. So so I had chosen this Barbie Land Batna braid that they had, and I've been working on it, and I've found other things in my stash, and I've dyed some other things that really will go well with that to sort of extend the Barbie colored, you know, very much bright pinks and oranges, along with some teals and greens and purples. And I think that would be fantastic for the stone crop cardigan. So that's what I had planned, and I had planned for this to actually be shifty. Like I swatched it with the mosaic color work. So not the shift again that's steeked, but actual shifty. But then I started thinking, is that a missed opportunity? Because I so often, if I'm not using handspun yarn, am using dyed yarn that may be superwash. So I don't, not that you can't steek superwash, but I would feel like the first time I'm steeking, I would feel a lot more comfortable if it was not superwash. So, so anyway, so I'm rethinking, and I'm wondering whether this would be a nice stone crop cardigan or whether it's too similar to other sort of gray plus things that I have. I don't think it's too similar to this. I think this is sort of a lighter bluish gray with then a lot of warm tones in it. So I feel like they're different enough. I don't know. Do I really need two cardigans that are almost gray? I don't know. Probably. I probably do. So so the great thing about doing shifty would be it would be the pullover version. The other nice thing about it is it would have a lot of other little bleps of color. So I have arranged a bunch of little bits of leftover handspun. This is all handspun yarn from various projects. Most of it's from Find Your Fade. My Find Your Fade shawl, which I'll wear for you guys sometimes. I wear that all the time. Some of it is from Stripes. But anyway, I was kind of thinking these would be good pops of color with this background. So then doesn't that just seem like a shifty? Because stone crop is mostly one color and then just has just a little bit of stranded color work within it. So I don't know. I kind of think this belongs as a shifty or a shiftigan. It's really hard to decide. I'm already working on one top-down stranded color work sweater, which is obviously the Hinterland that I shared. Although that's just a stranded color work yoke. So once I get past the yoke, that is just knitting. Once I split for sleeves, it's knitting in the round, right? Where the shiftigan would be stranded color work would be a little bit different because it's got some purl bumps, I assume, based on the texture. It would still be top down. It would be a different fit. It has less positive ease than the Hinterland. And it also, the whole thing is color work. So I don't know. Is that what I should be doing? Because then I wouldn't feel uncomfortable steeking this because it is what traditionally was done. If you were doing color work, you would use non-superwash wool. Like for so many centuries, we've used non-superwash wool. Superwash is a more recent thing. You can steek superwash, but would I feel comfortable doing it? But also, would I feel really scared steeking something that is completely hand spun? I don't know. I also don't know, now that I bring this up, I like to, in my Ravelry queue, which has several hundred patterns and shouldn't, in my Ravelry queue, I write a note to myself about how much yarn I need, how much yardage I need, and what my thoughts are. If I have any thoughts, you can select in the yarn that's in your collection if you want. if you have it listed in Ravelry and Stash. But it occurs to me while I'm talking about this that I think the limiting factor for stone crop, and the reason I had not planned to use this for stone crop, is because I will need 1900 yards of the background. I'll probably need 1750 yards because I'm not going to make long sleeves. Like, when do I ever? But 1900 is a lot more than the 1200 or so that I would need for the main color of Shifty or Shift Again. And the reason for that discrepancy is Shifty and Shift Again have this all over color work, where there's a lot less in stone crop. So I assume that's the main difference, is that if you look at Shifty and Shift Again, if you look at the pattern, which again is the same pattern as this, right? Or it looks about the same, you're using so much of the contrast yarns, where stone crop is mostly the main color and then just a little bit. So if I remember my cue correctly, and I stare at my cue all the time, I think I need 1900 yards to make stone crop, which is why I had kind of figured that I would need a generous 4, if not 5 skeins of fingering weight yarn if I'm just using commercial yarn that is either purely commercial yarn, or more likely for me, my hand dyed yarn, or like an independent dyer yarn. They tend to be about 400 to 437 yards per skein. 437 times 4 is like 1880, somewhere around there. So if we're considering that I'm going to shorten the sleeves, that's pretty realistic if I do get skeins that are those full 437. But then it should be non-superwash. And I have no idea how much yarn I'm going to have when I finish this, but I'm guessing it's going to be closer to 1400 because I have about 700 yards, and I used pretty literally half of the fiber that I had arranged for this. So I think that I probably won't have 1900, and that's the deciding factor right there. And I can't believe I'm just realizing this while we're talking it out, but sometimes it's helpful to talk it out, isn't it? So I think it's probably going to be Shifty or Shift Again. Let me know if those are both popular patterns. Have you made one? Do you think it's too much to have multiple gray cardigans? Yeah, I don't know. But, if I'm really being honest, I have so much gray in my collection that are headed for other pullovers or cardigans. So I don't know. I don't know what makes most sense. The point is, I'm happy with the yarn, and it's hand spun and it's beautiful. And I love using my hand spun. And I feel more proud when I finish something if I dyed the yarn or if I spun it. Especially because then I get to tell people that I dyed the yarn or I spun it. And that's like my favorite thing, right? Just like when somebody compliments your sweater and you knitted it and you get to tell them you knitted it. Same thing with the spinning. It just makes me feel so excited to tell people about spinning. So those are my main project planning right now. The Wishes cardigan, I'm pretty darn set on. I don't think there's anything else that I would rather make with that yarn. I got enough of it for the Wishes cardigan. It works at that gauge, and it would be truly really open, as well as a lightweight since it's silk and linen. It's going to be a summery cardigan. I need that. Right now, I would be wearing that because it is a little chilly in just this t-shirt, but it's also not Nightshift Shawl weather. Because this is like, I don't know, below 0 weather. No, realistically, I wear my shawls a lot when it gets colder because I don't always wear a coat. Don't ask me why. So a sweater and a shawl is more my thing. So I'm not saying I won't get wear out of this. I just won't for probably a few more months. But yeah, the Wishes cardigan, it's totally a climate and season appropriate thing to cast on. If I didn't have so many things that I'm already working on. So those are the things that I'm thinking about. Basically, I work on too many things at once, but that makes me happy. And then I just constantly dream about the next cast on and the next thing I'm going to spin. And I don't know, is that a problem or is that normal? I don't know. But anyway, thank you for joining me here. And I have no acquisitions to share this week because last week was just a nutso pure acquisition episode. So I'm sorry, but I have nothing new right this moment. I do have some pre-ordered yarn that may be on its way to me. So maybe next week I'll share some acquisitions. But yeah, thank you for hanging out with me. Like and subscribe if you're interested. This is still obviously a very new podcast. This is still new to me. So let me know what you think and let me know if you want to hear more or less about spinning, about whips, about my process of thinking through what projects to do. And yeah, I'm open to feedback, but thank you for joining me and I hope you have a great day and get to do some knitting and spinning.